This segment, we're going to talk about variables. A variable is nothing more than the name of a memory location in a computer. So there I can do A equals 3. What that is if you think about a computer, and somewhere in that computer is memory, a lot of it, and you sort of think about it like the P.O. boxes at a post office. So let's do this. And so sort of the fundamental way to think about it is that there are memory locations in that P.O. box, and you can assign a name to those memory locations. So I've called this memory location A, and I've put the value 3 in there. So it's not really A equals 3. One way to say it is memory location A gets the value 3. I could also call it memory location. I could do a memory location B, and that could get the value 4. So B gets the value 4. And I can do C gets the value 8. And so C gets the value 8. Now I can do things like D gets C, which means memory location D gets the value that was stored in memory location C, which is 8, right? Now, if I change what's in C, so now I say C gets 7, so that means the value in memory location C now gets 7. D does not change because these aren't bound together in any kind of way. The assignment is made here, and that's the only time it's made. D and C are not assigned together, they're not defined together. And so whenever you see, when you're dealing with programming, whenever you see the equal sign, think about it as the arrow sign, which says the memory location on the left gets the value on the right. Now, let's talk about naming variables and what are valid variable names. You can name a variable pretty much anything you want to. I can name, sticking with our Georgia Tech theme, I can name it Buzz, and Buzz can get the value 16. And so now there's memory location Buzz, and it has the value 16. I can do a memory location Georgia, and that has the value 23. And so memory location named Georgia has the value 23. Now, there are some rules to naming variables. The first rule is that you use letters, can be upper or lowercase. You can use numbers, and let's just stick with, in MATLAB, you can use the underscore. Right? The variable name needs to start with a letter, either upper or lowercase. We have some conventions that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So when you're doing variable names, we usually, these are conventions, these aren't rules, but this is how it's usually done. We usually start variable names with lowercase, and usually they stay lowercase, unless you want to do multiple words. So let's say if I wanted to do a variable called Georgia Tech, I would do it something like this. If it's a 2-word, I would either do Georgia underscore Tech, or I would do something like Georgia and then capitalize the first letter of the second word so that it looks a little different. And these are variable names as well. So I could do Georgia Tech gets 42, and this Georgia Tech gets 15, and that would create a variable. Let's see if I can fit it in here. Georgia Tech and then the other one is Georgia Capital Tech, and then this one would get 42, and this one would get 15. So those are perfectly valid as well. You cannot have a space in a variable name, so you could not do Georgia space then Tech. The computer would not recognize, it would try to recognize these as two separate variable names. So you could not do this. So that's a no-go. Like I said, we usually don't do capital letters, and then this is also case sensitive. So in other words, if I had variable name, if I had variable name yellow, that is different than variable name capital Y-E-L-L-O-W, or it's different than lowercase y capital E-L-L-O-W. In other words, caps and lowercase are different, so case sensitivity is there too. So if we stick to this basic convention here with either of these two options, and I tend to go back and forth. I like to try to stay consistent, but sometimes I'm not. If we stick with these two naming conventions, we'll be fine with variable names. The thing about variable names also is you want to be somewhat descriptive, but you don't want to be too long. So depending on the problem, like if I was doing the Pythagorean theorem, which is c squared equals a squared plus b squared, then I would probably name my variables a, b, and c. But if I was doing something like trying to figure out interest rate, then I probably would name my variable something like rate and principal and term. I would probably name them things that are meaningful for that particular problem. So you want to have meaningful names, but you don't want them to be too long and that you have to type them over and over again. So this is a general overview of variables. Keep in mind, they're nothing more than names of memory locations in a computer. And so if you think about them that way, that's a good basic way to start. And then we'll talk about different types of variables as we go forward. Okay, I want to use this video to show some stuff about variables in MATLAB. Specifically, I want to talk about the workspace over here. So let me mimic what I did on the board in a script here. If I do variable a equals 3, let me put a semicolon there. And if I do b equals 4, and c equals 8, and d equals c. Once again, I'll go back and put these semicolons in. I'll explain that probably in class. C equals 7. So let's just do those for a minute and go ahead and load this. On the first time I try to run it, it's going to ask me to save it. I'm just going to do my bars intro, and that will save it as a script file over here. Now, what I want you to notice is over here in the workspace area. So I've made these variable assignments here in the editor, and now over here in the workspace area, you notice that it has these names, and these are the names of my variables. And then it has the value of that variable, and it talks about the max and the min, which really, since we're only doing one number, they're the same thing. And sometimes you might want to, if you had a very large vector or something like that, we'll talk about vectors shortly, something that contains more than one value, you might want that information. But if you go up here and right-click, you can select what information you get. Okay? The size, how many bytes it takes up, mean, median, mode, the range, and all that stuff. So what I'm more concerned with right now is let's take out min, take out max. Let's put this thing called class in there. And class is also can be called type. It's the type of variable it is. These are type double. Double means it's a real number. They call them double because they use 2 bytes worth of information, which gives you a very large number. So these are type double. So as we put more variables in here, you'll see, as if I did as I did on the board, buzz equals 16. You'll note Georgia equals 23. Any of those are valid variable names. In fact, even the one I talked about, Georgia Tech equals 42, or another naming convention, Georgia CH equals 15. So if I did that, and when I save it and run it, notice that all these variables are defined. They're also in alphabetical order. Caps go before lowercase. So they're all in alphabetical order. You can see these are all of type double here. Let me do a couple more types. I could do variable E equals, let's just do the letter A. And then F equals the value true. These are different type variables, and as you can see here, notice with E, the image change from the crosshatch here, or excuse me, the cross here, to the AB, which indicates it's of type char, which is type character, and it has the quotes around it. The check here is of type Boolean or logical. And so we talk about Boolean and logical. They're used interchangeably, values. And notice I put true here, but it has a value of 1. If I had put a 0 here, excuse me, a false there, it would have had a value of 0. So this is a way, these are our memory locations that we're using. They're their names. Once again, we can get information about their size, how many bytes they're using, what have you. But right now, I was just focusing on the type of variable it is. And so this is a general introduction to variables.